The Civil Rights Movement was a time where people were trying to stop the things that were limiting African Americans in America. One example of an important stand in the Civil Rights Movement were the Freedom Riders. They were determined to change segregation on public buses and trains. They traveled deep into the segregated South and put an end to discrimination that blacks were dealing with on public transportation. The Freedom Riders, who were put together by CORE, or the Congress of Racial Equality, were one of the most important factors in getting equal rights for African Americans. There were a lot of previous events and people that led up to the Freedom Rides, the most known being Rosa Parks. Parks is known for refusing to obey bus driver James F. Blake's order to give up her seat in the colored section to a white passenger after the white section was filled. She was later arrested for civil disobedience. In 1946, Morgan v. Virginia trial made interstate transportation segregation illegal. The Freedom Riders were soon established. However, in 1960, the court ruled this law unconstitutional in the case of Boynton v. Virginia. The Freedom Riders were needed even more now that the law was reversed. The riders traveled by bus into cities to see what places segregated blacks and whites and which ones didn't. Their goal was to end discrimination in these places, but in a non-violent way. They planned a trip across the South that was supposed to end in New Orleans on May 17, 1961, to celebrate the anniversary of the Brown v. Board of Education trial. The men and women didn't really know what to expect on the trip. They knew they wanted to get their point across on the trip and have everyone in the South agree with them, which was not going to come easy. Like they thought, this trip turned out to be a journey to hell and back. Before the buses filled with the 13 riders came in Anniston, Alabama on May 14th, members of the Ku Klux Klan were given permission to beat the riders as they came into the bus station. And that they did. 9 were injured on that day, and also their bus was firebombed. Birmingham was no better. In fact, it was worse. More were injured and their second bus was set to flames. The riders were ordered to fly into New Orleans on May 17th, but they did not let violence end their trip. However, the Freedom Riders ended their journey in Mississippi on May 19th when they were arrested for their own protection from mobs. Although they did not make it all the way to New Orleans, their trip was still a success. All 13 men and women will always be a part of the Civil Rights Movement. They held their heads up high, even smirking in their mugshots. Because of the Freedom Rides in 1961, rights were granted to people all across the country who were struggling with differences in skin color. With all the Freedom Riders did, anyone will say that they did whatever they could, any cost, to help the Civil Rights Movement. To this day, Americans look at all those men and women as true American heroes, and the ones that fought for every inch of our freedom.